In the cold skies of World War II, mercy was a luxury no one could afford. Yet, on one winter morning in 1943, something impossible happened. An American bomber, torn to pieces, struggled to escape Germany. Its crew was barely alive, bleeding, freezing, and praying for a miracle. From the clouds behind, a German fighter appeared. The enemy. The Americans held their breath. But instead of firing, the German pilot did something no one expected. This is the true story of Franz Stigler, the Luftwaffe pilot who risked everything for a moment of humanity. A story lost to time, until fate brought two enemies together again, 50 years later. December 20th, 1943. High above the frozen fields of northern Germany, a squadron of B-17 flying fortresses, known as the Mighty Eighth, thundered toward Bremen. Their mission: destroy a vital aircraft factory producing German fighter planes. Among them was a brand-new bomber, Ye Old Pub, piloted by a young lieutenant named Charlie Brown. It was his first combat mission. But within minutes of reaching their target, anti-aircraft shells exploded around them. One shell tore through the nose, killing the bombardier instantly. Another ripped through the fuselage, disabling one engine. Flames, smoke, and freezing air filled the cabin. "We're hit," Charlie shouted, gripping the controls with shaking hands. The tail gunner was unconscious, the radio operator bleeding, and oxygen tank shattered. They dropped out of formation, alone. Now, they were flying low, slow, and easy prey. German fighters spotted the crippled bomber instantly. They dove in from all directions. Cannon shells ripped through the tail, wings, and cockpit. The co-pilot slumped over. Another engine caught fire. When the final German fighter broke away, Ye Old Pub looked like a ghost. One engine dead, nose shattered, most guns destroyed, holes big enough to see the sky through. Somehow, Charlie kept it flying. He whispered to his crew, "Hold on, we're going home." A few miles away, Franz Stigler, a Luftwaffe ace, prepared for takeoff. He was one kill away from the Knight's Cross, one of Nazi Germany's highest honors. When he took off and spotted smoke trails in the distance, his instincts kicked in. "There's one straggler left." His commander's voice echoed in his head. He approached, fast, precise, deadly. But as he got closer, something didn't feel right. The bomber wasn't fighting back. When Franz came beside it, what he saw stunned him. Bullet holes everywhere. Crews slumped over their guns. A man bandaging another's wounds with shaking hands. The tail gunner was dead. Through the broken glass, he could see the pilot, pale, exhausted, still flying. Franz lowered his finger from the trigger. This wasn't war anymore. This was survival. "I can't do this," he whispered. "I won't." Franz thought back to his flight instructor in Africa, Gustav Rodel, who once told him, "You fight by rules of honor. You don't shoot a man who cannot defend himself." He circled the bomber, inspecting it. It was a miracle it was still flying. He saw a terrified face look back at him from one of the windows. That was enough. Franz made his decision. He pulled alongside the B-17 and gestured with his hands. "Turn around. Land. You'll die if you keep going." But Charlie Brown didn't understand. He thought the German was mocking them. "He's playing with us," shouted one of the gunners. But Franz wasn't playing. He was protecting them. He flew just a few meters away, guiding the damaged bomber away from anti-aircraft zones. Below, German soldiers watched the strange sight. A fighter escorting an enemy bomber. None dared shoot. The B-17 bomber, Ye Old Pub, limped across the northern sky, its engines coughing smoke. Inside, silence. The crew was too weak to speak, too scared to move. Suddenly, a shadow appeared beside them, sleek, silver-gray, wings sharp like blades. A German Messerschmitt Bf-109. The men froze. "He's back. We're done," one whispered. But the fighter didn't open fire. Instead, it drifted gently to the bomber's side, so close that the crew could see the pilot's face through the canopy. He looked calm, focused. The American gunners gripped their weapons, but Charlie Brown shouted weakly, Don't shoot. He's not firing. The German raised one hand and gestured with a flat palm, steady, then pointed ahead, guiding them. Through the cracked glass, the two pilots locked eyes. No words, no radio, just silence and wind. And in that silence, something passed between them, an understanding deeper than language. Franz knew shooting them down would bring him glory, but protecting them would make him human. He stayed there, flying wing to wing with the bomber. For over 10 minutes. Beneath them, German flak batteries saw the pair. But they didn't fire. Maybe they were too shocked to believe it. Maybe they understood. Franz escorted the B-17 all the way to the edge of the North Sea, Germany's western border. There, he knew radar would lose them. He looked once more at the shattered bomber, smoke curling from its wings. He saluted. Charlie, still in disbelief, raised his hand and returned the salute. The German smiled faintly, banked his plane, and disappeared into the clouds like a ghost. The Americans never forgot that moment. A man they called the Angel of the Clouds had saved them, even though he wore the uniform of the enemy. When Franz landed back at his base, his hands were trembling. His mechanic ran up and shouted, "Did you get the kill?" Franz simply replied, "No." The man frowned. "You let them go?" Franz only said, "They were already defeated." Then he walked away. He never told his commander what really happened. He couldn't. Under Nazi rule, showing mercy to the enemy was treason, punishable by death. Franz had risked everything. His rank, his career, even his life, for a handful of strangers. But deep down, he knew it was the right choice. "I couldn't have lived with myself," he would later say. They were men, not targets. After the war, Franz watched his country collapse. The Luftwaffe was gone. The cities burned. Millions were dead. He emigrated to Canada, trying to start a quiet life. Yet, the memory of that crippled bomber never left him. Some nights, he'd look up at the sky and whisper, "I hope they made it home." Decades passed. The war had ended, but its memories didn't fade. They just grew quieter. Charlie Brown had built a life in America. He had a family, a small home, and a heart still haunted by one question. Why did that German pilot spare us? Every year, around Christmas, he'd think back to that cold sky over Germany, the sound of engines dying, the faces of his crew, and that mysterious man who appeared from nowhere and vanished into the clouds. Charlie spoke of the encounter whenever he could, at veteran gatherings and schools, but most people only smiled politely. A German pilot helping an American? You're remembering it wrong, son. But Charlie knew what he'd seen. As the years rolled by, he started to wonder, was Franz even alive? Did he survive the chaos that swallowed Germany? In 1990, nearly 50 years after the war, Charlie decided he couldn't rest until he found him. He began by writing letters, dozens of them, to German Air Force associations, veterans groups, and newspapers. To anyone who might know of a Luftwaffe pilot who spared a B-17 over Bremen in 1943. Weeks turned into months. Most letters were returned unopened. Then one day, a letter arrived from Canada. The handwriting was old and steady. Soft piano fades, new quiet music enters, hopeful. It read, "Dear Mr. Brown, I was a Luftwaffe pilot. I believe I am the one you are looking for. I remember your crippled bomber and the salute we exchanged. It was the right thing to do. I would like to meet you, not as enemies, but as old men who shared the same sky." It was signed, Franz Stigler. Charlie sat in silence, tears streaming down his face. For 47 years, he had wondered. Now he finally knew the truth. The man who could have ended his life had instead chosen to save it, and he was alive. In January 1990, in Seattle, Washington, two old men walked toward each other across a quiet airport hangar. One wore a simple jacket, holding a framed photo of a B-17. The other, tall, white-haired, his eyes filled with warmth, extended his hand. "Hello, Charlie," said Franz softly. Charlie could barely speak. He stepped forward and embraced him. For a long moment, neither said a word. The years, the war, the distance, all vanished. The embrace wasn't between former enemies. It was between two men who had seen too much and finally found peace. "I thought you were dead," Charlie said. Franz smiled. "Not yet. I've been waiting for you." They sat together for hours, talking like old friends who'd known each other all their lives. Franz spoke of his family, his time in the desert, and how after the war, he couldn't fly anymore. "I left Germany with nothing but memories," he said. "But I never forgot your bomber. It reminded me I was still human." Charlie told him how his crew had survived, how they'd all made it home. He paused, eyes wet. "You didn't just save us, Franz. You saved my faith in people." From that day on, the two became inseparable. They traveled together to air shows, schools, and interviews, telling their story, not of victory or defeat, but of mercy. When they appeared on stage, the crowd always fell silent, because standing there weren't soldiers, but symbols of forgiveness. In one interview, a journalist asked Franz, "Why did you do it? Why risk your life for the enemy?" Franz looked at Charlie and replied, "Because I couldn't shoot a man who had no chance. I would have been killing honor itself." Another time, Charlie was asked how he could call a German his brother. He smiled and said, "He was the enemy who gave me back my soul." In their later years, they often spent evenings sitting quietly together, watching the sunset. "You know," Franz once said, looking at the sky, "we were both lucky that day." Charlie nodded. "No, Franz. We were both blessed." Time, as it always does, kept moving. In 2008, Charlie Brown passed away in Florida, aged 86. Franz Stigler followed just months later, in March of the same year. Friends say he died peacefully, holding a framed photo, the one taken with Charlie years before. Their family stayed in touch, often saying it felt like they shared more than friendship. It was something sacred. On their graves, separated by continents, their epitaphs carry nearly the same words. "My enemy, my brother, my friend." Their story has been told in books, documentaries, and classrooms across the world, not as a tale of war, but of what war can't destroy: humanity. In a time when mercy was rare and killing was duty, Franz Stigler proved that compassion can exist even above the clouds. His act didn't change the outcome of the war, but it changed the lives of everyone who heard it. The skies of 1943 witnessed countless acts of hate, but only one of mercy so pure that it still echoes today. And that echo whispers one message: even in war, you can choose who you are. Because heroes aren't always the ones who win. Sometimes, they're the ones who choose not to pull the trigger. This was the story of Franz Stigler, the German pilot who chose humanity over hatred, the man who showed the world that even enemies can become brothers. Dedicated to Franz Stigler and Charlie Brown, proof that compassion can survive even in the darkest skies.